Okay, as I am out and about in my daily life and I receive street theater, different gang stalking things in my life, I'll just stop and talk to people. I've never had a problem with that. Speaking my mind, it's probably one of the big reasons why I am in this program. But the number one biggest question that I get is, what do you mean? What is gang stalking? I don't know what you're talking about. What street? What do you? And to try to explain it to somebody in a very short, brief moment that you have with a person out in public that's going about doing their job or running errands or doing things that, or pretending to run errands, whatever they're doing, and they need to get somewhere, you don't have enough time to explain all of this to somebody. So another targeted individual wrote up an explanation of what gang stalking is. And it's got a German name, and I didn't even put it on here. It's in the literature. It'll come up here. But this is the best explanation for gang stalking and organized harassment that I've seen. So I copied it to my Facebook page, and I printed some of these out, and I've handed a couple out to people that have 100% for sure been part of my targeting. A couple people at some businesses, just a couple people, yeah, the people that I know 100% for sure that are involved in my targeting with these businesses. I took some video of one of the guys that gave me some really bad street theater one day, and has several times over and over. I gave one of these to him, and I explained to him that he's involved. That I wanted him to read this, and so he can understand what he's involved in, because I don't know if they really quite understand the full scale of what's going on. So without talking about this too much, I'm just going to go ahead and read this the best I can. Now, it's a little cold, so if I rub my face or anything like that, it's not hand signals. I try to keep that in mind while I'm out too. It's cold, and people are doing this stuff like that, so I'll try not to do that too much. It is pretty damn cold today. Okay. Usually before gang stalking begins, the targeted individual may at first be placed under covert forms of surveillance. The person is monitored 24/7. Foot patrols and vehicle patrols may be used to follow the individual, as well as electronic means as a part of the monitoring. Psychological profiling process. Once the psychological profile is complete, the gang stalking can commence. Gang stalking generally originates from when a covert investigation is opened on an individual, and teams of plainclothes police officers, citizen informants, snitches, and snoopers are deployed to obsessively harass the targeted individual, usually to an extreme degree. What is gang stalking? It is called gang stalking because the target is overtly followed by teams of gang stalkers and placed under intrusive surveillance by groups of organized individuals, such as undercover police officers, police informants, snitches, snoopers, neighborhood watch groups, etc. That was kind of redundant, but get the point. Many targeted individuals are harassed and placed under surveillance and psychological influence operations in this manner for months or even years before they realize that they are being targeted by an organized protocol of harassment. I believe I've had some level of this since I was born. I was born into this. And it's increased as I've gotten older and spoken out and studied me. What happens during overt methods of surveillance and stalking is very similar to what happened to many innocent individuals from East Germany, or activists and dissidents in Russia and many other countries. Millions of people in the former East Germany were targeted by these harassment groups. Their friends, family, and community at large would be used to monitor, persecute, and harass them, period. In Russia, it was used by the state to declare activists, dissidents, or anyone they thought would be an enemy of the state as mentally unfit, and many were institutionalized using this form of systematic control. See psychiatric reprisal. They had one of these places in Norman, Oklahoma, actually. That when I would drive by, I would get freaked out. That I could feel it. And I did some research on it, and they had one of these places in Anadarko, Oklahoma, as well, I believe. Easy for me to say. See psychiatric reprisal. The closest oppressive program to gang stalking that was witnessed in the UK were the Black and Tans in Northern Ireland. McCarthyism is the US COINTELPRO, FBI, and the Red Guard squad programs in Russia. However, it appears unusual that COINTELPRO in the USA and East German Stasi started their counterintelligence programs at around the same time in the 1950s. Right after World War II, we snatched up their scientists, their way they do things, brought them over here, and then they put it into force. I mean, there's really these documents that say this. However, it appears unusual that COINTELPRO in the USA and the East German Stasi started their counterintelligence programs at around the same time in the 1950s, which had been devised from the Russian secret police, the Cheka, after the revolution in 1917. The Red Squad programs were used for monitoring and harassment of various groups, along with the Russian secret police, the Cheka. They were responsible for the elimination of over 66 million targets. Civilian spies, also known as covert human intelligence sources, are recruited from every level and sector of society. Just like with COINTELPRO investigations, everyone in the target's life is made a part of this ongoing, never-ending, systematic psychological harassment, influence, and manipulation of the targeted individual. These actions are very specifically designed to control the target with the aim of keeping them in line or their psychological destruction. I can't even say this. Zersitzung. So that's the name of this whole program, apparently. The original name, I guess. Okay. These actions can also be designed to destroy the target over time, make them look crazy, and leave them with no form of support, as the stress and anxiety of such program tend to target isolating themselves. Read that again. Stress and anxiety of such programs tend to, there's an S in there, programs tend to the target isolating themselves. All right. For the targets of this harassment, gang stalking is experienced as a covert psychological, emotional, physical, and spiritual form of attack that is capable of immobilizing and destroying a target over time. For the state, it is a way to keep the targets in line, control them, psychologically program them over a period of time, and attempt to destroy them. The people conducting these programs have now been identified as having pathological psychopathy and are part of the psychopathic control grid. Okay, that's big right there, because that's what this is. It's completely psychopathic. They want to see people hurting and tortured and suffering, and they think that this is like a garbage disposal that kind of just weeds out the weak, and only the strong survive. That's been told to me I don't know how many times. Only the strong survive. Survival of the fittest. Only strong survive. Well, when you're not part of that giant group that's going after somebody, it's a lot harder for you to survive. So it's easier for you to say that when you're on the other side. You're not all by yourself. Worldwide programs of control and conformity have been used with equal success and lethality. What we are seeing now is globally coordinated and organized effort to control and conformity. Many countries around the world are currently using a model of policing called community-oriented policing. It's described as a systematic approach to policing. It focuses on instilling a sense of community with a geographically located neighborhood. Communities come together and discuss what values they would like to have in their community. And it's also time to discuss a problem individuals the police have identified. And it's also time to discuss problem individuals the police have identified in a specific area. The police will usually then use smear campaigns in attempts to character assassinate the target. Like your Facebook page, you think you're posting on your Facebook page. You probably have another one that's out there that everybody else can see, and you think that everybody else is on your page and this is a real thing, but they've got a big enough team to completely create something that doesn't exist with photos you have, say things you haven't said, and that's what the community sees. They don't see what you actually post on your Facebook, if it's public or whatever. But sure as hell know that if they are doing that with these people making Facebook pages, these people saying all kinds of different things that would infuriate different groups, it's going to be public. You're not going to be able to see it. Your IP address is going to be blocked, but you're not going to be able to see it. And everybody else will. And then you're wondering why everybody's staring at you weird. Or, you know, you're probably like a local celebrity that's just pissing everybody off. And you don't even know it. Okay. Okay, so police will usually then use smear campaigns and attempts to character assassinate the targeted individual, and bogus investigation will be opened. Police informants and local citizens can then be easily directed to harass the targeted individual. These local programs in many countries have been forming partnerships with other government-run programs at local, regional, and national levels. In Eastern Bloc countries, community-oriented policing was used by the police to run communities with an iron fist, using intimidation and harassment, using police informants. It is this model of policing that many targeted individuals have complained that it is being abused to recruit informants for use in gang stalking. See link for criticisms of community-oriented policing. Oh, there's a link on there. This modern-day systematic form of control, harassment, or more precisely, covert warfare could only be funded at higher governmental levels, just like it has been in other countries since at least 1917, where similar types of harassment programs have been implemented. It is all part of a system of control and conformity that has been in place for decades. It is, in some cases, centuries. A system of control with many local groups and appendages taking part, community-oriented policing. Many do not understand or care that the end consequence of this harassment protocol is to destroy a person. Quote on the systematic terrorizing of individuals. Organized stalking is a form of terrorism used against an individual in a malicious attempt to reduce the quality of a person's life so they will have a nervous breakdown, become imprisoned, institutionalized, experience constant mental, emotional, or physical pain, become homeless, and or commit suicide. This is done using well-orchestrated accusations, lies, rumors, bogus investigations, setups, framings, intimidation, covert threats, vandalism, thefts, sabotage, torture, humiliation, emotional terror, and general harassment. It is a ganging up by members of community who follow an organized method and participate in a systematic terrorizing of an individual. The usual goal is to isolate the target from all forms of support so that the target can be set up in future for arrest, institutionalization, or forced suicide. This may seem far-fetched to those who have not experienced gang stalking, but this is generally the intended goal. Okay, I was talking about this earlier on a video, that it's almost the only people, the way that this is set up, almost the only people that can really understand, that read this and not question some of it, would be, you'd have to be targeted. So just read this and completely believe all of it. But then, think of some of the other things that people read and believe. I mean, this is, who could make this up? Okay. Other goals involve sensitizing the target to everyday stimuluses as a form of control. Classical conditioning, which is used to control targets when they get out of line. Once the target is sensitized to certain stimuli or locations, the gang stalking programmers will find it easier to evaluate stress and anxiety levels. These programs are designed to make the targets of the harassment vulnerable to stress and anxiety over a period of time, as any stalking victim will acknowledge. The secondary goals seem to be to make the target homeless, jobless, enable a mental breakdown, and the primary goals seem to be to drive the target into forced suicide, just like what they did with some of the targets in COINTEL. It is a useful way of eliminating perceived enemies of the state. Since the turn of the 19th century, tens of millions have died as a result of gang stalking. I believe that number 100%. Um, okay, so what I just read, and I'm sorry I didn't make it through that as well as I should. I've been trained to read these things in front of a camera. But I'm in a little bit different situation now than I was then. Although I've always had some uh, continuous, long drawn out, um, trauma based mind control in my life, uh, it's gotten worse over time, and it is 100% trauma based. Gang stalking. I understand that in life things happen. People have bad luck. But like I've said 100 times, I don't know how many times in my videos, it's timing and repetition that can prove this. But for you to prove this, you would need to have a video camera recording. You would literally have to um, record front, back, 24/7, be on a live feed your entire life, and walk around with that like the Truman Show, only you know it. You know that you're live feed 24/7. Um, and document every single thing that's going on. So, I mean, everybody can pretty much figure out right away that, well, if you're trying to make a living and trying to do anything like raise some kids or, just get ahead in life, function, pay the bills, pay the light bill, that's pretty tough in general. Um, but when you have an army of saboteurs that are being paid by who knows who to block you from progress, it's a whole different story. And anybody uh, that is successful, that hasn't been a victim of targeting, um, and I would probably do this too if I didn't know about this, because it's just kind of how I used to think. Like if you don't succeed, it's your own damn fault. It's all about your decisions. In some cases, that it's not. But somebody that would be successful, that has been successful, they're very proud of that. And it would be easy for them to discount somebody like myself. Like I feel like I'd be a very successful individual, not targeted individual. I would be a very successful person by now if people had not been inserted into my life to intentionally slow me down and not make financial gain. Because, I knew where I'd be going with it. I talked about being a politician a couple times. Back when I was better looking and I could function a little better. Before before all this, it might have been an option. Um, but that's the goal. They don't want you to be able to get into a position of power and influence because they know that you can do that. You can talk to people. You can talk some sense into some people because you are just naturally gifted at making sense, and sense is not needed in business. My tax guy literally told me, I was trying to ask him some questions about my taxes, and he literally said, "Okay, you're trying to use common sense now. We need to stop doing that." Okay. So if that's the case, then something messed up with it. We need to fix some things. It's not just like quit thinking, right? It's not quit thinking. It's think more. Think more. Think for yourself. Question. Question when somebody tells you something, and do not ever say, "I'm only doing my job," because you only doing your job can end up in the result of somebody's death, and you don't know it. Even if it's okay. If somebody told me this a few years ago, I would probably tell. Well, I'm trying not to cuss anymore on too much on my channel, so but I basically tell them to F off. If they told me that I could be contributing to somebody's death by going like this, because that sounds just nonsense, right? What if what if the people around you for years everywhere you went did that and like 20 other things to let you know that every single place you went that they were there and that they were there to give you a hard time. They're just like, hey, I'm here. I'm here standing next to you. I'm here bumping into you. I'm here talking about your personal information. You know, you'd think you're only doing that one little thing, but you're contributing to organized felony and but murder. And the internet has figured out so many things, and I say the internet in general because it's just the internet. People on the internet, people can see these videos. Some people might have some money that and some power that are um, kind of behind the scenes that everybody thinks they're on their side, but they're actually looking out for some of these people. We do some research on some of them, a little triage process, kind of maybe, and filter through some and maybe question them personally, stuff like that. Instead of like, oh, hey, let's search this person's internet history. Well, the internet's so unsecure now, anybody can hack your stuff and log in to different anything, go through your IP address, make anybody look like they did anything. So, got off track there. Might have to read that one again. Anyway, that was the best explanation I'd heard of organized stalking, gang stalking, since this started.